Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Everesting Record Group podcast. And I'm joined again by Chris. Hello, Chris.
Morning.
And today we have joining us Al Colville. Al, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And Al, just to give people a bit of a backstory, so you are a ultra endurance climber, and you hold a world record, don't you, for the most vertical climbing. All climbing is vertical. The most climbing in 48 hours, I think, is the title, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, done in September 2020. Kind of in the middle of kind of the lockdowns and stuff. It's how I kind of occupied myself. But yeah, the record that we set was 30,321 meters in 48 hours.
Holy smoke.
And yeah, some stats around it. So resting time of 1 hour and 26 minutes, for every all stops, basically. I think it's 30,000 calories.
Yeah.
117 kilometers. Yeah, so it was a good couple of days out.
We've all had to do something in lockdown, didn't we? So we took up a cookery class, renovated the house, or climbed world record numbers. Yeah, logical. Brilliant, good. And you're actually going to be riding the event, aren't you, Al?
No, absolutely. I saw it, and obviously contacted you guys because it looks fascinating. I'm interested in world records. That's obvious. But also the idea that you can get people together, that kind of camaraderie. And I think, the great thing about Everesting, it's kind of the best, hardest solo doorstep challenge you can do, right? But actually the idea of doing it in a group is really that dynamic, helping other people, kind of offering advice and doing it together and kind of achieving it as a team I think that really piqued my interest. Yeah, so I'm going to be there in July and hopefully give it a bash with all the other people that are doing it. And set a world record would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
It really would, wouldn't it? It's intriguing, isn't it? And when we first spoke, the three of us, I think we got quite excited about the group thing, that people will be sat at home preparing, thinking about their own contribution, which is of course all that's in their hands. But on the day, it's going to be all about getting that record and all of those people over the line. And the first person to finish is really, it's going to be sort of an insignificance, isn't it? It's when we get towards the record number that the excitement's going to grow. And Chris, you're preparing yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, well, it's getting fit. I mean, when we put this together, just to reinforce, this is all about the group. So we've talked about the course. The objective is to get everybody over the line. This is not a race. This is not anything that's hard as Alan's crazy challenge, and all respect to him. But what Alan will bring is his wisdom, tips and guidance and encouragement to help everybody across the line. And we're really grateful for him joining for that. Also, we've got our Guinness application pending. Actually quite an arduous process, and Alan's been through that and given us some great information on the first steps we need to do. So we got that in hand as well. So it's a real team effort, and it really, I know people go on about teams, but it really is get everyone across the line having a great fun day. So we're super excited about it, and fantastic. All the people that have already signed up. A few more to go, but we're
which was I think we had a few more last night, so we're actually at 64 now. So we're on for it. If anyone was thinking, is there a cut-off point? We've got more than enough people to set the record. We'd like to have a bit of a buffer and get to 100, but we've passed the point of no return, if you like.
Yeah, Norway, we're going to take your record. Just saying.
So Al, I know you're preparing for a couple of things this year. But you've got some thoughts around prep for the Everest Group Challenge already, haven't you? Which we hope to leverage your wisdom.
I was thinking about it, having kind of chunked up the kind of preparation, and probably the best thing to do is I've written a lot about this stuff and talked about it as well. So maybe we'll start to release kind of just little chunks of kind of help and advice. But I was just thinking about, back before I did my first Everest in December 2019. It was a winter Everest. It was horrible. It was 17 hours. It was on the tumble in Wales. It was really tough, wet, miserable. But I remember the prep for that, and actually the learning in that and what I did after, before the next one. And I started to come to the realization that it's all about your climbing efficiency. And that efficiency needs to be really relaxed, you know, kind of very light on the handlebars if you can, kind of transferring kind of power through your core into the pedals rather than, you know, hammering the pedals out of the saddle. So I spent a lot of time, and maybe that's some advice for people is, you know, we're a good few months out, so that's great. But I'd say there's definitely building climbing into your training. That, you know, that's got to be done, because let's face it, if you don't train at something, you won't get better at it, because that will give you the leg strength, because that's what you're looking for by just doing more climbing. And as you do those, kind of doing more hills, your pace will improve, and your ability to sustain that pace from doing more hills will improve. And then you can really start to hone in on, you know, your position on the bike, your efficiency with your kind of pace, being able to hold a desired pace as well, because as you get more efficient on the climb, you can do that. And then the little things like, you know, just staying in the saddle more, certainly during training, because it just builds that leg strength. And it's less effort in some regards. Now there is, you know, if your gearing is wrong, for example, then out of the saddle probably is something. So we can discuss that, the gearing part. I would say on the kind of the relaxed efficiency, if you haven't, maybe a bike fit, kind of a professional bike fit would be a really good idea. It's a little bit of a game changer actually, in terms of, you know, because you might not be getting the full stretch out of the leg and the full power that you could get into each kind of pedal stroke. So that's kind of one, if you haven't done, maybe there's a bit of a tip in there. And then the kind of the idea that, you know, the kind of nutritional kind of aspect where, you know, eating on a climb can be quite tough, for example. So just working in, if you did some reps of a climb, where would you be taking on nutrition, or even, you know, where would you be taking on hydration? So there's that kind of learning as you do it. And actually a great way to learn, and particularly with the kind of storms we're having at the moment, is Zwift. So Zwift is, because it's a static bike, it's brilliant because you can just sit, right, and work on your technique. So if you did, I don't know, Epic KOM or Alpe Zwift, and don't worry about bashing it out, just actually sit there and think about your efficiency, and think about your positioning, and think about your pace, and think about your pedal stroke, and think about how relaxed your shoulders need to be and your hands need to be. It's a fantastic way just to kind of, because outdoors is kind of a little bit harder to kind of focus on that stuff, because you might have cars and other factors. So yeah, the kind of Zwift can become a really handy tool for doing that in the build-up. And even, you know, a kind of a base camp Everest, you know, 4,000 meters on Zwift, it's a lot easier than doing that outdoors. So maybe even if you reach for 2,000 meters on Zwift, or even 4, then that's incredible training, and maybe to have achieved a month before it, for example. And then the kind of the last thing really is just that keeping that nutrition going. Climbing hills just burns up fuel, you know? It's kind of just keeping that kind of hydration, particularly in training. That's a kind of mistake I used to make, is just not taking on enough, just thinking about, you know, how much should I be taking on, and sticking to it. Because actually on the day, the thing that might stop you would be, you know, nutrition, not getting enough, stomach going, stuff like that. So the building in your nutrition to your training, if you can start to nail that, and know that it's sustaining you so you can go further, then, you know, those sorts of things, I think, in the kind of next month, 6 weeks, 2 months, are really important to kind of start to work in, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I totally echo that. I mean, I've only done a virtual, and I did have a super experience. A couple of guys give me some coaching tips, and I really took that on board. So when I was doing all my training, my particular pace going up the Alp was 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I nailed every single ascent within about 30 seconds on that. So a nice relaxed pace. And also it gave me an opportunity to work out how much food I'd take. So every hour and a half, I was having a mix of either flapjacks or bananas or peanut butter sandwiches, but actually getting used to having food and exercising is super important. And I used to do quite a lot of marathon running as well. So actually working out that even pace that you can sustain across the whole piece is really important. Generally, I found an even pace the whole day is the best. Going hard, start with disaster, trying to do negative splits. I mean, the best way is just keep it steady, relaxed, as you said, and just practice. But getting the nutrition right is vital. If you don't feed, you're going to bonk. and coming back from a bonk will take you a while. It's probably an hour's recovery time. So, keep eating, practice that. It's so important.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, just to add on that, then is when you go out and you kind of do this stuff first, it's you've got a target that's like an Everest. Celebrate those little victories. Like every 1,000 meters is quite cool. So just kind of even if it's a training ride and you get to 1,000 meters or 2,000, and you'd hope really before a month out from doing this that people are able to do maybe 3,000, even 4,000 meters. That would have been something that happened along their training. But just celebrating those little victories, whether it's 1,000 meters or, that's quite important as kind of it's the psychological part, isn't it? Those little emotional lifts that you can get kind of as you go through. And even in training, you can get used to that thing. It is a numbers game, isn't it? I mean, I've got meters fever, so yeah.
I think it's 8,848. It's definitely a number.
Yeah. One that we're all becoming very aware of, isn't it?
I mean, the beauty of, because it's an event, and a set number of reps, that makes it very measurable. So you're talking about giving yourself psychological rewards or food rewards. Well, that's it. The best way probably on the day is to do a set number of ascents, have a break and a feed. So whether that's 6 or 4, whatever you want to do, have you work it out and the timings. But keeping a nice repeat cycle is best rather than doing erratic. I'll do 4, have a break, or 6, have a break. It tends to be better if you keep it regular, I think.
So there's an interesting thing there. I think we're all different where we are. But I've figured out that kind of 4-hour blocks were very good for me. And it's quite a neat number as well, if you think about, depending on the kind of time you do an Everest in, but, 4 hours can nicely turn into your kind of 12 hours can turn in for the 48 that was. But I had worked out in training, like, really nice and easy, 4 hours, but, coming in into that last hour, it's like, right, could do with a little bit of a break or some food. So that was nice. So kind of working out kind of what's your kind of rhythm, if it's 2 hours, then that's fine. That, and you kind of take a break, or if it's 3 hours, and it might be reps, Chris, as you say, but in training, you can start to think about, okay, so let's stretch it a little bit, good for an hour, good for 2 hours. So as you can kind of, because what you don't want is stopping every hour. That wouldn't be ideal, or certainly stopping every rep, because it'd take you an awfully long time. So how could you kind of work out in training? And then of course you can plan your nutrition for those blocks of time as well, which is really handy. So then you can know if you need to, what you need to take on the bike, for example, for that amount of time. So that's, and then you're right, could be for our block is kind of good for you, then your kind of long ride in a week might be 4 hours. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so, but we'd all be a little bit different on that. I've done Everest with other people and they're like, they'd rather go for a bit longer actually. But for me, the kind of 4 hour worked out really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, isn't it? I mean, like when I've run marathons, if you try and pace following someone else, it always ends in tears. You've got to find your own pace and your own timing, and getting, this is a really vital part of the training. It's not just about developing the power and endurance, it's finding your rhythm in terms of the breaks and the feeding, and that is equally as important as the fitness.
It's interesting because if you think about a group ride, which is essentially what it is, we're all, everybody doing this will be somewhat competitive, right? So the idea that you follow the wheel in front of you, that could get tricky because there's a lot of wheels you could follow. So you could wear yourself out in that first third. And the other thing is, I think the concept of thirds, that you hold back on the first third of this, you should do, and then you maintain that kind of pace in the middle third, and then you kind of see what's left in that last third, rather than the other way, which is that you put too much effort into the first third, and you just, your second third then starts to drop, and your third one is you're just falling away. So yeah, the holding back on that first third, certainly the first climb, like holding down the adrenaline, because that's what'll happen, gun goes and you're off. That rule of thirds, I think, I've used a lot, and even in terms of nutrition then, because it depends, and we could talk a lot about nutrition, but for me, I'm not big on gels and stuff, but sometimes with a hard Everest, I do think in the last third, maybe I'll have a couple of gels, because I know they'll have massive effects then, because I'll probably need it. I mightn't fancy eating very much, as in solids, so there's that stuff, which we will talk about in kind of maybe a future one around. The whole nutrition area is fascinating and very individual as well. So it's that flexibility on the day to be able to swap in and out what you might feel like, because your tastes will change, and that's why in training, building in to work out what your tastes are, to also work out when you're fatigued, like what do you fancy eating? What's that kind of thing? And have you got it to hand on the day? Because the brilliant thing about Everest is, of course, you've got some, you can bring whatever you want and it's there inside the road. So you should have whatever you fancy. And it might not be the thing that you kind of usually take. It might be the peanut butter sandwich. And if that works, you're fantastic, and you have a few of those. But yeah, working that out and training, I think is important. But on the day, having the flexibility to have a few things there. And you can just kind of choose depending on your ebb and flow to bring the kind of whatever 14, 17 hours, however long it'll take.
Yeah.
Intriguing stuff, isn't it? And we'll talk a lot more about nutrition and training and all of that in future podcasts. And we'll put in the links below some links to Al's literature that you were talking about and places people can find that information, because I'm sure everyone's super interested to read and hear some more. But we had a couple of other big bits of news, didn't we, Chris, that we wanted to share about the day, which most of you will have seen, but we wanted to talk about that for a couple of minutes. So we've had a change to the course, haven't we?
Yeah, we had a few concerns two concerns. But people had enough time. Also, we found that when one of our friends went and was riding the course locally, the first ramp is significantly steeper than the Strava segments. So Richard had a brainwave. We thought, well, actually, it's so hard, the first bit. Yeah, the super strong riders, be no problem, but we want to get everyone across the line. And we figured actually the first segment's probably about 2 minutes at 20%, and it's just going to burn everyone's matches. So Richard's brainwave was...
Get out.
Cut it out.
Yeah, which seems so obvious, doesn't it? But when you've set the segment, you start at the bottom, you finish at the top, and oh no, there's a 20% bit, and it's so obvious sat here, but it was a bit of a eureka moment, really, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So now I've just done the maths on it. So we've changed now. It's going to be about 63 ascents of 1.35 kilometers. So yeah, that's down from it was going to be 50. So it only adds actually 3 kilometers to the whole day. So it's not a huge amount of extra distance, but what it will do is make it the rest of the climb is relatively even. So it will be fantastic for nice even pacing, which Alan's talked about. And we believe that will just make the day much more achievable for the average rider. And I put myself in that category. And we've also added an extra hour in the morning as well. So we're now, if you want to, you can start at 4 o'clock. So you've now got an 18-hour day and a more manageable course. So we think taking those two factors into account, taking on board some feedback we've got from others, our friend running the course locally, we think this is going to strike a good balance to get everyone across the line.
I think so, yeah. 20%, 50 odd times, it's going to have finished off a lot of people, isn't it? So I think it's the right move. So our next thing is to go back and look at the turn point for the exact place we're going to turn everybody around, but there's not much flexibility on that. It's quite a narrow bit of road, but the whole thing is, and that's not something we can solve. So we're going to have to introduce a little bit of logistics to slow people down in the turn and that kind of thing. But we think now we've got the spot on course and everything's set up for 17th of July, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit of maths. And I worked out, Keith, our friend that rode it, he took 9 minutes going up it gently. So if you allowed 15 minutes per rep and descent, that works out about 15.5 hours ride time. So you've got 2.5 hours of break to manage in that. Just an example that, obviously everyone will have their own pacing, but that was Keith taking it fairly gently. So it's workable.
Keith's a fit guy. He's ridden the beast 3 times, I think, got around it no problem, does all our events. So, whilst it sounds like, it's achievable, it's not super comfortable, is it? What was your Everest time, Al? Do you remember? I'm sure you do.
In which? So
when you did when did you say you did an Everest? Was it?
Well, it depends. I've done. I think I've got 10 of them or something.
Oh, sorry. Right, okay.
In the bank.
So you're a rough time for you then.
Yeah, it's a funny one. You asked that because people say to me, "What's your fastest Everest?" And I've never done a fast Everest because all the Everests in the build-up were either picking something really nasty like a winter one or a double. And then just before I did the world record, I did do 2 back-to-back days, so 2 12-hour Everests back-to-back with a sleep in between. But no, but they were all about working out my pace that I could sustain for a long time. So I actually never gone and just had it.
Never nailed it.
That would be so. I've had friends who have done it, and it's just, goodness me, the power you'd have to be. Yeah, so I don't know what my fastest Everest could be. It's kind of tempting to kind of have a go at that, but I'm going to do another Everest in 3 weeks now. But that's a Rome, so the one where you do the elevation, but you don't repeat the same hill at all. So that's going to come in 3 weeks. But again, that won't be fast because that's going to be 600 kilometers.
I saw the route for that, and that is quite ambitious, isn't it? Yeah, it's a heck of a day out.
But yeah, I would hope on the day. I mean, the reality is that we're all going to be a bit slower on the day for all the reasons that Chris is saying with the turnaround and stuff. And we just have to be taking care of each other, right, as well. It is a group. It's a group effort. It's a group event. So that kind of, idea that we all have to stay safe. That's the number one. Everybody's got to come away with this without any kind of mishaps. So, that will take a little bit more time. So I think the extra hour is a good idea, just to kind of allow that for people that might be thinking, okay, I can do it just about in that. It gives you a little bit of leeway. But I would say to people that we all will be a little bit slower because of there's more people on the course, the slowing down, the turnaround, that sort of thing. So, and we all have to take care of each other. That's our responsibility to each other, isn't it? So yeah,
that's an example. I took 12 and a half hours for my virtual one. And virtually indoors easier because you haven't got all the logistics of turning around and stuff. So if it was 12 and a half indoors, 15 and a half outdoors, that's allowing an extra 3 hours, which I think is sensible. I'm a decent sportif rider. I'm not a Cat A superstar. So if you take me as Joe Average, it's a reasonable measure, give or take.
It is doable, isn't it? But it's not. It's no walk in the park, even for an excellent athlete. That it's no walk in the park by any means.
I think that's the beauty of Everesting, isn't it? It levels the playing field, so anybody can do it. But it's hard for everybody, and we're all going to find it tough on the day.
Yeah, you're going to have to try. You can't rock up and just do this. It's not like just doing a 60-mile sportif. You've got to train, but it's a hard event. But even for an average sportif rider, it is achievable if you put the work in, and that's really the message. And put the work in, it'll be a fun day.
Yeah,
and I think that's a good note to end on, isn't it? So everybody, thank you so much. Al, great to meet you, and thanks for the time. And we're going to be back soon. Everybody, sounds like you need to get your game plan sorted and really start thinking about that training. So see you all soon. Good luck, everyone.